more grifting, greed, taking from us. That's mental. We're calling this one. The Trump administration says it's going to stop paying out $1 billion in federal grants that 260 school districts across the country have been using to hire mental health professionals like counselors and social workers. Before we get into the details of this dirty deed, Cenk, first thoughts?
Yeah, what I'm looking forward to is showing you guys the Republican hypocrisy on this, because it is overwhelming. Wait till you see the video with your own eyes. Back to you, Sharon.
Yeah, so let's get into it. The grants were part of the 2022 bipartisan Safer Communities Act. Bill passed in the aftermath of the school shooting in Uvalde, Texas, in which a teen gunman killed 19 elementary school students and 2 adults, also injured 17 people. The bill poured federal dollars into schools to address rising concerns about a student mental health crisis. Endgame was to prepare and place 14,000 mental health professionals in schools, says Mary Wall, who oversaw K-12 policy and budget for the US Department of Education during the Biden administration. Now, of course, those school districts are having the rug pulled out from under them. So what is Donald Trump's excuse for this one? US Department of Education is telling impacted districts that the Biden administration is awarding the grants, violated the letter of purpose of federal civil rights law. Spokesperson at the Department of Education alleged that recipients used the funding to implement race-based actions like recruiting quotas in ways that have nothing to do with mental health and could hurt the very students that grants are supposed to help. We owe it to American families to ensure that the taxpayer dollars are supporting evidence-based practices that are truly focused on improving students' mental health. Wow. 2022 federal grant notice told schools explicitly the services to be provided must be evidence-based. While also disputes the DOE's characterization of how they're using the funding. The focus of these grants was absolutely on providing evidence-based mental health support to students. Any suggestion that this is a DEI program is a distraction from the real issue. Thanks to Trump's decision, schools will have to let go of mental health professionals and forego other programs aimed at providing support to their students, which is ironic because, well, I think we can all remember Republicans claiming to care deeply about the issue of mental health, at least when it was a convenient excuse not to care about the guns. Watch.
Guns, no guns, it doesn't matter. You have people that are mentally ill.
Guns are not the problem. More gun control would not have prevented many of these tragedies we see across our country. This is an issue fundamentally of violence, of mental health.
The real challenge here is mental illness.
We know that most of these people are mentally deranged, so do we need to do a better job in mental health? You bet we do.
It's the people that pull the trigger. It's not the gun that pulls the trigger. So we have a very, very big mental health problem.
We unfortunately have a mental health crisis in this country that I really do think that we need to get to the root causes of, because I don't think it's the whole reason why we have such a bad gun violence problem, but I do think it's a big piece of it.
It seems to me there are 2 broad categories that underscore the problem: mental illness and school safety.
The answer to mass shootings is not fewer guns, but it's more institutional mental health in this country.
Anyone who suggests, well, maybe we should focus on background checks as opposed to mental health, I suggest to you is mistaken. If there's anybody who thinks that we can't do more to address mental health care, they're wrong.
Or maybe it's focus on both. Nobody said either or, Greg Abbott, but just the lies. As you mentioned, Cenk, the hypocrisy here. Every time somebody says, hey, these semi-automatic weapons, 19 kids in Uvalde killed. Okay, yes, there was the delay of going in and lots of controversy, but they don't want to talk about the guns. They only want to talk about mental health, and we just have to deal with it there.
Yeah. I like that last clip the most because that's the governor of Texas saying, if anybody says we shouldn't address mental health, they're wrong. Good. Now tell Trump, because he just said don't address mental health. Let's take away $1 billion. In fact, that came out of the school shooting in Uvalde, Texas. So is Abbott going to criticize Trump now that he's taking away $1 billion from the real problem Of course not. He's gonna go and lick his boots instead. So you see, they're all liars. So they say, oh, don't do anything about guns, don't do it. Hey, NRA, you got my check? Okay, oh, then you got it from the gun manufacturers that profit off of all the mass shootings and the deaths. Oh, it gets soaked in blood. Great, send me the check, okay? All right, now, it is not the guns, it is really mental health problems. Oh, we're gonna give tax cuts for the rich and we need to cut mental health? Okay, great, is the check clear from the rich and from corporations? They did? Okay, oh, that's also soaked in blood, great, okay, I got the check. All right, cut mental health, we don't need no stinking mental health. Everybody's fine. Well, then if it's not mental health or the guns, we're just gonna keep having mass shootings. They're like, yes, so what? That's your kids that are dying, but I got the check. That's how these politicians are. We built a terrible system here. The overall constitutional system is beautiful, right? But the Supreme Court in 1976 and 78 made bribes legal in America. They said corporations are humans, corporations can give money to politicians. And then they said that corporations can give infinite money to politicians. That legalized bribery. That's why for the last 40, 50 years, the American people have been getting robbed by corporations and the rich. All the money's going to the top, and we're having everything fall apart. We've got school shootings, our kids are being massacred, and we're not doing anything about it. We have massive mental health issues, now we're taking money away from it. And remember, they took $1 billion away. That is an enormous amount for mental health, but is it a big enough number that it would impact the debt? Like, well, okay, yeah, that was super painful to take money away from mental health, right? But at least we balanced the budget. No, that's just $1 billion. They added $150 billion to the Pentagon at the same time. Well, where's that money going? We don't even know because the Pentagon can't pass an audit. But I'll tell you where it's going, to defense contractors that have legally bribed almost all of our congresspeople and all of our presidents. So if you bribe these guys, whether you're a weapons manufacturer like guns or a weapons manufacturer like missiles and tanks and aircraft carriers, you're gonna rob the average taxpayers basically at gunpoint. But the number one robbery, the great American robbery, is the tax cuts for the rich. They're about to do $5.5 trillion in tax cuts. What is that $1 billion in mental health cut going to do? It's going to cause a lot of damage, but $1 billion versus $5.5 trillion. If they cared about the debt, they wouldn't cut this at all. They just wouldn't do the biggest tax cut of my lifetime for the super rich and for corporate interests. So I'm sick of these politicians. What a giant group of liars. They're all enormous liars. When you see a politician 9 out of 10 times, you're looking at a professional liar. That's my view. Jackson, what do you think?
Well, and for the Republican Party that's been fundamentally against social programs at all in the public commons, even public education, I mean, do you know how much money it would cost to cover every single kid and every single person to potentially stop them from carrying out a mass shooting? Like, how are we gonna get to everybody with that? And then a lot of the things that cause mental health problems are like, standards of living, how much money you're making, your ability to like go out to eat maybe once a month with your family, feeling like a failure, feeling like you haven't lived up to what you think you should, feeling like the things that have collapsed in your life are because you're not worthy and you're not good enough. These are the things that people deal with that make them feel depressed or that make them have mental health issues. Why did my dad not show up for me? Why did my girl do this? Like those are you can't just spend money to correct these types of things, but you can do something about people having access to the weapons, but they don't want to do that. So again, it's like if you really want to cover this in any realistic way, these people ain't trying to spend that much money because you would have to cover everybody and be all up in their personal life. They're not gonna do that.
Yep. All right.
Yeah, we'll move on, but I just want to say this. Let's also remember where the polling, the American people are. Jackson mentioned, people on a certain side, and it's true, but these are the greedy politicians that Cenk, you're talking about. Because if they gave the people what the people are looking for, it's something more reasonable, but they're just not willing to. Even Steve Scalise, who was shot at a baseball game, remember that? And he's still on the other side of this thing. The money's that good. It's sick.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.